Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
The thing about the Cockney Rejects they were the ultimate football band. I mean, you look at you're looking about bands that played terrace punk or whatever it was called at the time. They were the ones who meant it the most. They were the ones who were the most identical with their audience. They had the same taste, the same interest, the same passion, and obviously the passion for West Ham drove them tremendously to the extent they wrote about 4 songs about West Ham in the first 2 albums.
Right, here's my rendition of West Side Boys, probably the most infamous West Ham song. We meet in the bowling every Saturday. We talk about the teams that we're gonna do today.
Today we are looking at the most violent gig in punk rock history, involving Cockney Rejects. What could go wrong when you have the NF, Aston Villa lads, Birmingham City lads, West Ham ICF, skinhead gangs, and the Cockney Rejects all under one roof? Let's find out. Cockney Rejects are an English punk rock band that formed in the East End of London in 1978. Their 1980 song, Oi, 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 was the inspiration for the name of the Oi music genre. The band members are supporters of West Ham United and pay tribute to the club with their hit cover version of I'm Forever. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time. Blowing Bubbles, a song traditionally sung by West Ham supporters. Formed in East London in the late 1970s, the Cockney Rejects rejected the art school punk scene, delivering a fiercely working class sound. Their lyrics reflected the realities of inner city life, police harassment, street battles and football, striking a chord with the youth of the time. Signed by EMI after just 4 gigs, the Rejects quickly rose to fame with sell-out UK tours and a chart-topping debut album. Their wild antics on top of the pops earned them a ban from the show, adding to their rebellious reputation. In the year 1980, they recorded the iconic I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles to celebrate West Ham United's FA Cup final. The Rejects also had very strong links to the West Ham football hooligan firm, the ICF, and members of that mob would attend Reject gigs up and down the country. So, let's get straight to that faithful night in Birmingham and find out why the riot happened. This is what one Birmingham media outlet had to say about the incident. It was large-scale violence spawned by Villa and Blues hooligans who had come to witness a band with a considerable skinhead following. The Rejects were exponents of Oi music, the thrashing soundtrack adopted by the far right. The Rejects were quick to distance themselves from fascist followers. Where the Rejects went, trouble sometimes followed. And when it came to an old-fashioned ruck, the East End band members were no slouches. Brothers Jeff Stinky Turner and Mick Gegus were amateur boxers, and bass player Vince Riordan was the nephew of Jack the Hat McVitie, murdered by Reggie Cray. Their reputation as hardmen was tested to the limit at the Cedar Club. Writer David said, "It started when a heavy glass ashtray was thrown and almost sliced Mick's nose off. Jeff started fighting with people. That was it. The Blues football fans surged forward to get them. According to the Rejects, they gave as good as they got. They retreated to the dressing room, took wire coat hangers and fashioned them into weapons and stormed out again." One eyewitness said it as terrifying, the most terrifying moment of his life. The club was totally destroyed. The band's equipment was either trashed or stolen. After the fight, the only person who went directly to hospital was Mick. While he was in the A&E waiting room, other casualties started to turn up, and he had to escape through one of the windows. They even brawled in the hospital. With the Rejects, football was the trouble, and it was understandable because they'd been fanatically pro-West Ham aggro from the word go. Even at their debut Bridge House gig, they decked the stage out with a huge red banner displaying the Union Jack, the West Ham crossed hammers, and the motif West Side, which was that part of the West Ham ground then most favoured by the Iron's most violent fans. It was a red rag to testosterone-charged bulls all over the country. But ultra-violence at a Birmingham gig really spelled their undoing. The audience at the Cedar Club was swelled by a mob of Birmingham city skinheads who terrace chanted throughout the support set from the kids next door. By the time the Rejects came on stage, there were over 200 Brum City skins at the front, hurling abuse. During the second number they started hurling plastic glasses, then a real glass smashed on stage. Stinky Turner responded by saying, "If anyone wants to chuck glasses, they can come outside and I'll knock 7 shades of shit out of you." That was it. Glasses and ashtrays came from all directions. One hit Vince, and as a Brum skinhead started shouting, "Come on," Mickey dived into the crowd and put him on his back. Although outnumbered more than 10 to 1, the Rejects and their entourage drove the Brummy mob right across the hall, and finally out of it altogether. Under a hail of missiles, Mickey Geggus sustained a head injury that needed 9 stitches, and left him with what looked like a Fred Perry design above his right eye. Grant Fleming, a veteran of such notorious riots as Sham at Hendon and Madness at Hatfield, described the night's violence as the worst he'd ever seen. Taken to the local hospital for treatment, Geggus had to bunk out of a 20-foot-high window when tooled-up mates of the injured Brum City fans came looking for him. Back at the gig, the Londoners emerged triumphant from the fighting, only to discover all their gear had been ripped off. Total value, £2,000. The next morning, the Cockney contingent split into 2 vans, one that went on to the next gig at Huddersfield, the other containing Mickey, that went cruising round the city looking for any likely punters who might know the whereabouts of their stolen gear. Incidents that morning in Oldbury involving Geggus, 3 locals and an iron bar resulted in Mickey being charged with malicious wounding. 8 months later, he had the luck of the devil to walk away with suspended sentences. Yobs up and down the country declared "open season" on the group. The plug was pulled on a Liverpool performance because of trouble. Police blocked a return engagement in Birmingham and even escorted the Rejects down the M6. Musically, they had become public enemy number 1. Jeff Stinky Turner, now 52, admitted the June Birmingham battle effectively spelt the effective end for the Cockney Rejects' career, although the band have since made a comeback and are playing gigs again now. In a voice that sounds as if he gargles with broken glass, Jeff recalled, "It was a terrible gig. It was terrible. Ultra-violence, like you've never seen before. It was like a Sam Peckinpah movie. There was something strange about that night. It all seemed so organised." Coming to Birmingham was a totally different ballgame. The roadies who were setting the gear up said it was a bad atmosphere. It was strange for me because there were a lot of Birmingham and Villa fans together. Things started to get thrown and we were having verbals with them. Someone threw a pint glass and it hit the back wall. "Like an idiot," I said. "Whoever threw that, make your way down the front and we'll go outside." With that, everything started coming over. Bottles were coming from everywhere. An object came flying and it smashed off my brother's forehead. There was a little locker room with 4 or 5 of us inside. We pulled off clothes rails and I said to the bouncer, "You've got to open the door because my brother's out there." We went back into the fray. We were smashing them and started turning the tide because we had tools now. This must have gone on for 20 minutes. The old Bill came rushing in, came up to us, and they tried nicking my brother, who had loads of claret coming from his forehead. We weren't happy with that. Violence followed in the hospital where Mick Geggus was being treated. The next morning brought more trouble, with the Rejects' equipment stolen and a second brawl earning Geggus a court appearance. "That was pretty much the end for us," admitted Jeff. Young kids who follow chart bands were not going to go to the gigs. Despite the riot, The Rejects were again booked to play Birmingham 4 months later. "We got to the hotel," said Jeff. "The police turned up and said, 'You're not playing.' I was over the moon, to be honest. I didn't want to go through that again." The band had to take some responsibility for the violence that stained their live performances, Jeff stressed. "My thing was being in trouble with the Old Bill and West Ham. We were always going to nail our colours to the mast, but it was pushed to the extreme. We were young, we didn't care, and when you're young, you think your firm is the only firm. We were like that. We didn't do ourselves any favours. The boundaries were pushed too far. You have one battle and you think you're king of the hill, but then you have to look over your shoulder. I even had to look over my shoulder in my own manner." This is what the Birmingham Zulus had to briefly say on the incident. The most infamous musical football interchange came with the Cockney Rejects a couple of years later, when their gig in Birmingham was greeted by a massive blues skin contingent, singing "Keep Right On to the End of the Road." The Rejects got trashed, and the gig was abandoned. I actually heard that blues had a punk mob from Villa fans at school, although by the time I started going down regularly again, it had morphed into a mix of skins, mods and rude boys. There was also a good rowdy bunch of skins who'd come into the city on my bus from the north. They were young coal miners from Polesworth in Staffordshire.
Once in the 90s, which was really, and they can never get things right at West Ham, and I think it was on it might have been on it was on Sunday they used to show the game. It was after the big match, and they had this big fanfare thing, and they was going to drop a parachutist like into the ground, and we never get things right anyway. It's always low budget at West Ham. And this parachute skydiver, he's dropped out of the ground, he's hit the roof of the South Bank and tumbled over the top. I don't know, I think he broke about 2 legs and broke his arm as well. So it was just before a game, and we got beat as well. So that was a typical West Ham bungling. Yeah, I'll always remember that. I thought that was hilarious. It was like, weren't with the poor geezer who like fell over the thingy, but watching it, you just thought, that sums us up, shambles. Say the late 70s, early 80s to mid 80s was very bad. It was bad, but I think it might have been done more in a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I think it was just people who wanted to protect, like, you know, everybody, like, you know, oh, we're protecting our little patch. Because I think then more football supporters actually come from near where the ground was, you know, or was situated. And now it's different. Everybody's moved out and they come from miles. And I just think it was a kind of a turf thing. That was, and yeah, the football hooliganism, I mean, by the time it got to the mid-80s, by the time I was 17, 18, I was well out of all that. It was a thing that I did as a kid. I'm not proud of it, you know, but never nothing serious, you know. But then I think it started to get really serious, and that's when the times, I look back at it now and I think, what was all that about? But it was just a pattern, the way it went in the 70s and the 80s, like, and I think everybody was at it, quite accurate. Like, I think Nick Love, I mean, I think he's a bit of a boy himself, Nick, and I've met him, and he understands, and I think he got that spot on. It was really good. He should have made it about West Ham now, not Chelsea. It had been building and building, and yeah, we give it a large. I mean, we was kids and we done our thing, but that gig, I think it was a standard bearer for all that, you know. I mean, it was actually a coming together of Birmingham and Aston Villa who come together, which you don't normally get 2 teams who will come together. I mean, because they supposedly hate each other, the hatred in any city for 2 or 3 teams, and that partially come about because of that. And I think it was the hatred for us being cocky and showing West Ham and going, West Ham's this and West Ham's that. So it was inevitable it was going to happen. It was a 50-50 thing, you know, that happened, and it wasn't nice. It was about 20-handed, and what it happened is when you was on the stage, there was nowhere to go back. The stage was actually in the middle of the club. I mean, it was a big club, and there was no way out. So when you come on stage, straight away the verbal starts, and like, well, when I handle verbal, it's like if you're a stand-up comic, you know, you can put someone down, you've got the mic. So, but then things started getting chucked over and thrown at us, and there was like pint glasses, you know, not plastic glasses. So you're swerving them, and then somebody did something or the other, and they tried to invade the stage, and then the next minute there was nowhere to run, so we just jumped in and give them hell. Like, and they give us a bit of hell back, but we survived it, 20 of us, right? And then it just went completely berserk. It finished after about 20 minutes with the police coming in. Like, that's how it finished, because we couldn't, like, you know, give no quarter, and we was moved to a little place at the side of the stage. I remember, and the bouncer tried to keep about 10, 12 of us in there. But my brother was out there as well with about 4 others, so we broke free from that. And the melee just continued, it was backwards and forwards, and then all the stuff was coming over from the bar, you know what I mean? And that's why, you know, I've got a big slice along there. It was definitely down to football. It wasn't a Cockney Brummy thing. It was like a West Ham Birmingham thing, and it must have gone on for 15, 20 minutes, but there was a lot of people badly hurt. It stood me in good stead, but it also helped out that we had about 19 geezers with us, like, it was proper handy, you know? So that helped as well. I had a lot of problems with these people because they'd kind of infiltrated music, you know? And for the punk bands around at the time, like Sham 69, then I know they was trying to lean on the bands like Madness and the Specials. They had a lot of trouble with that, but they always look for a new whipping boy when people kind of, you know, cower to them, but we wasn't going to have that, you know what I mean? We're deadly opposed to these people as well. You couldn't have, I mean, my dad, he fought in the Second World War, you know, and my granddad fought in the First World War, but, you know, these people were bullies, and we was a lot younger than them, and they wanted to come over, like, and start causing trouble at our gigs and all with their, like, Nazi regalia and all the stuff that went with it, and we give it to them. We made sure that they never come anywhere near us again. You know, I'm sorry that's the way it is, but I've got to be honest, like, you know, we dealt with people like that. No, we never had security in mind us. We was just ourselves. We wasn't this, we wasn't that. We was just our own little set who went to West Ham, and those people had to be punished, you know. I mean, we had people around us, you know, as a good mate of mine, like Cass Pennant, you know, and we just couldn't have them people. But that was easily dealt with in the end. Wasn't too much of a problem getting rid of them.
Now let's hear from One Time, Cockney Rejects manager and author Gary Bushell, for a bit of close insight into the band and the Birmingham riots. The following is taken from Gary's excellent book called Hooligans, True Stories of Britain's Biggest Street Battles. It's a must-read if you are into stories like this, and I will leave a link in the description if you want to buy the book. His real problem with Oi was football related, and the very worst example of it was the Battle of Birmingham, when the Cockney Rejects attempted to play a gig at the Cedar Club. That night was the worst violence ever witnessed at a UK rock concert. Brutal and relentless, it made Sham 69 at the Finsbury Park Rainbow look like a day trip to Alton Towers. The night ended with scores of casualties, including Mickey Gegus. In Jeff Turner's words, "There were people being cut, bottled and glassed. The PA was utterly destroyed. There was claret blood everywhere. Men and women were in tears." It was the rock and roll equivalent of the Battle of Rorke's Drift. Only, instead of 140 redcoats with guns facing 4,000 Zulus, we were 20-odd Cockneys battling more than 200 Midland skinheads in vicious hand-to-hand fighting. It was the opening night of their tour, and 2 van loads of the Firm mates had come up for the crack. Among them, Johnny Butler, Dickel, H, Swallow, Danny Harrison, Danny Meakin, John O'Connor, Bruce, who was one of the Ancient Brick crew, and Brett Tidman, all in the mood for a party to take them out of the equation. Jeff describes the day. "We did the sound check in the afternoon, which was fine, and got back to the gig just after 7. Kevin Rowland from Dexys Midnight Runners owned the club, and he was there on the night. It was an odd place, very poorly designed. The stage was right at the back, but there was no backstage area. There were stairs in the middle of the venue which went up to the changing room, so you had to walk through the crowd to reach the stage. We were due on at 9 p.m. As soon as we got there, you could sense there was a hostile atmosphere. It was packed to capacity, with 500 or so crammed in. A lot of the crowd was skinheads, but there were a lot of straight football hooligans there too. They were a mixture of Villa and Birmingham City, which in itself was strange, because normally they'd hate each other's guts. It was like West Ham and Millwall coming together to face a common foe, which was unimaginable to us. At that time it would never have happened. The hatred between South and East London was too great. We had to walk through the body of the crowd to play the gig. As soon as they saw us, they started gobbing at us, and not in a punky way. It was pure loathing. F off, they were going. F off, you Cockney, see you next Tuesdays. The atmosphere was poisonous, the worst atmosphere I'd ever experienced. The entourage came with us as usual and stood at the back of the stage behind us. There was a pair of steps that went down to 2 exit doors at the back. The only other way to leave that club was through the crowd. We started playing. Some of the crowd was clearly into it, but a big belligerent section weren't. They were just verbaling us from the off. They didn't want to know. There were a lot at the front going, "Come on, you wankers. Come on, you cunts." I couldn't really focus on performing because I could tell it was going to go off. One particular bonehead sticks in the memory. He was down the front wearing a Fred Perry shirt, and he had an Aston Villa tattoo on his arm. All he kept doing was screwing us and saying, come on," offering us out with his hands. I looked at Mick. We both really wanted to get down there and give it to them, but we were trying to keep calm. We were in the middle of Where the Hell is Babylon, probably the 4th number, when the first pint glass came flying over, and I did the worst thing possible. I stopped the set and said, "Whoever chucked that glass, fight your way to the front of the stage and we'll go outside, 1-to-1. We'll see who's fucking big then." I should never have said it. It was the worst thing I could have done, because then they all started milling up and the air was full of things being slung at us. Fag packets, coins, beer, nothing too heavy. But there were a few more glasses in the bombardment too. I remember seeing Mick in his yellow vest. We used to call him the Canary, exchanging a few words with these boneheads down the front. We finished the song and Vince started tuning his bass. I turned round to see how he was getting on, and the next minute I heard a commotion. I looked, and Mick wasn't standing next to me anymore. He was in the audience on his own, just having it with this mob. So that was it. We all jumped down, and it was proper going off. We were battling these skinheads. Vince swung his boot as he leapt in from the stage and kicked some gobby geezer right in the mouth. Knocked him spark out. There were only 20 odd of us, and initially there were about 80 of these Brummies who wanted to know, but we pushed them right back to the bar. We were beating them, no problem, and that was when I saw a geezer take a glass and stick in right in Danny Harrison's face. There was blood everywhere. Over to my right, Johnny Butler was cut as well. Some of the opposition had tools, but where we had been pushing them all back to the bar, the others were getting their hands on glasses and bottles. Armed, they started to turn the tide of battle. We were having to move back towards the stage now, stepping over their casualties on the floor, who we'd already battered the F out of. I looked back and H was standing up on the stage. Some huge bonehead came from the side and smashed him right in the mouth. He was lucky he never broke his jaw, but H didn't even go over. He just turned round and upped him. We reached the stage and started pulling over all the Poe equipment to throw at them. There was nowhere else to retreat to. We had to make a stand here. We could have gone through the exit, but that would have meant defeat, and we couldn't contemplate that. We couldn't give in. We were on that stage trying to hit them with everything we can lay on hands on. The bass drum, the stool, the mic stand, the lot. The shower of bottles started up again. I looked up and saw what looked like a UFO spinning over. It appeared to be moving in slow motion. It was a big glass ashtray, and it bounced off Mickey's forehead. The claret poured out of his head like a waterfall. But that only made me madder, and I punched my way back into the melee. At this stage, the bouncers finally decided to make a show. They pushed their way up to the stage and started shoving us through one of the exit doors into a small area. The street was the other side of the next set of doors. The bouncers locked us in with one of their blokes in there with us to keep us in check. We looked around and realised that Mick, Andy Swallow and 3 others were still out there. I told the bouncer to open the door. He didn't move. I lost me rag. "Open that fucking door now," I shouted. "We've got 5 men out there." He was a big geezer, but not that old. Probably 26, 27, but he was shitting himself. Vince said, "If you don't fucking open that door now, we're gonna do you." The geezer started crying. He said, "I can't take no more of this." He went to pieces. We pushed him to one side and kicked the door out. There were bits of iron in the room from disassembled clothes rails, not heavy, but if you whack someone round the head with one, they'd know all about it. We grabbed what we could carry and went back into the fray. Our 5 were still on their feet holding the fort. They dragged a couple of big tables on stage to use as a shield. There were people unconscious all over the floor. There was broken glass everywhere. The PA was all smashed to pieces. The row had been going on for about 20 minutes. We had to finish it off. This was do or die time. We burst back into action, giving it everything that we got. We were smashing them, cutting them, hitting them. We drove them back through the club, past the bar, and clean out of the venue. As they were retreating, they were all shitting themselves, which just shows what wankers they were. We'd fought our toughest battle. We'd fought as a firm against the odds, and we'd won. They had all showed so much heart and bottle to stand their ground like that. If it had happened in wartime and we'd been wearing uniforms, we'd have got the VC for it. At the moment of victory, about 30 Old Bill arrived, which was just as well because that created a sense of calm. I looked at my brother's face and it was ruined. He had claret everywhere, a gaping head wound. Danny Harrison was bleeding. Johnny Butler was cut badly. The place looked like a battlefield. There were geezers being stretchered out. Poor Robbie Percy was as white as a sheet. He was the same age as me, but I was used to it. All the kids next door came from cosy little places around Hersham. They'd had nice upbringings. They must have thought, what the fuck were we doing here? As soon as the cops got there, they wanted to nick Mick. For some reason, they always seemed to go for him. I was livid. I said, "Here's 20 of us and all that fucking scum start on us, and you want to arrest one of ours?" What were we supposed to do? The Old Bill was speechless. Give Kevin Rowland his due. He never complained. He backed us up. He said, "You had to do what you had to do." He was apologising to us. The poor sod was shell-shocked. His bouncers were useless.
We're not the South Bank, we are the West Side Upton Park.
Still kept Dr. Martins and iron bars, smashed the coaches and do them in the cars.
The ICF are behind us. We must have been about 22, 23-handed. So
Some
there's
top boys,
500 in this gig, it's packed. But not all the 500 want to row. There's got to be 200.
200
so we're at
hardcore.
the front and they keep on. I remember there was a geezer with a villa tattoo, like that skinhead, and he kept going, "Fucking wanker, wanker."
We thought so.
all
It was
the
actually
time,
very
like-
unusual
yeah.
to Villa
Yeah.
and Birmingham
Birmingham,
City to be
yeah.
under one roof united in the first place.
So they kept
Yeah.
on, we'd stop after a couple of gigs, then someone, I think they threw a pint glass or something, wrong move, because I said, whoever threw that, I said, we'll stop the gig now. I said, I'll take you outside one-on-one, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's never going to happen, but that's what you say at the time. So then all of a sudden, we played on again and things were really getting bad. Then we ended one song, we went to start the next one, I couldn't hear the guitar. What was the guitar? And I turned around, Mick, where are you? I turned around, Mick's in the audience, like just going smash, crash, bosh, just going right off. So that was it, like, we was down in amongst them. We drove them back, but we drove them back to the bar, which was like for them. And all of a sudden they've got the glasses, the ashtrays.
They started tooling up.
Mick was standing next to me, and I always remember it was like a UFO, flying saucer, like this big glass ashtray. One of these buggers, like, come hurtling towards like that. It was me and Mick. I thought, who's it going to do? All of a sudden it hit Mick right there, like, bosh, like claret and blue army, straight out. Well, that was like red rag to a ball.
It was the worst example of gig violence ever seen in Britain. It was the Rejects and their away firm, 30 of them, ended up battling a hostile crowd of 10 times their number. And I likened it to rock and roll equivalent of Rorke's Drift, because that's how brutal and bloody and how outnumbered they were. But they won.